and the beers in the air.
All the members of the kingdom Animalia needs oxygen to make energy. Oxygen is compulsory. Without oxygen, we die. But as you know, the byproduct of the process that keeps us all alive, cellular respiration, is carbon dioxide or CO2, and it doesn't do our bodies a bit of good. So not only do we need to take in the oxygen, we also have to get rid of the CO2, and that's why we have the respiratory and circulatory systems to bring in oxygen from the air with our lungs, circulate it to all of our cells with our heart and arteries, and collect the CO2 that we don't need with our veins and dispose of it with the lungs when we exhale.
Before we get to the elements of the human circulatory system, you should know that there are different types of circulatory systems. In things like insects and spiders, they don't have a blood per se. They have something called hemolymph. That hemolymph is going to be both blood and what's called interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid is going to be the fluid that bats the cells inside us. In an insect, those things are combined together, and that's why, if you squash a bag, you get that good that comes out of the bag. But in us, we put our blood inside blood vessels, and then the interstitial fluid is going to be everywhere else inside our body, and so we keep those separated. So, that's the difference between a closed and an open circulatory system. In animals, we also have a variety of different hearts. And so a fish like this lives in water. It simply has a two-chambered heart. So its heart has two chambers that's separated by a valve, and the reason why they live in water.
And so when you're looking at the pictures of hearts on the next few slides, or to make it a little simpler, I'm going to get rid of half of this diagram because half of it is just the left side of the fish. Okay, so if you look at it, what do we have? We have one single loop. So the blood is going to the gills where it's going to get the oxygen, and then it's going to the body, and then it's going to continue back to the heart. So we only have one loop, and that's worked great in the water. But when you move onto land, as you lose quite a bit of that pressure as you go to the gills, or if on land as you go to the lungs, and so it simply isn't a system that works. And so that's why on land we have a three-chambered heart. So things like this bearded dragon over here, we have a three-chambered heart. So what does that mean? Well, let me again draw it right down the middle and get rid of the half of the diagram so it will make it easier. What we have now is we have two loops. And so we have one loop that goes to the lungs, then it comes back to the heart, and then we have another loop that goes to the rest of the body. And so that deals with the pressure issue. But one thing that's interesting is that instead having of just red and blue blood, we have this purple blood. So what does that mean? We're getting a mixing of blood, or in other words, we're having a mixing of the oxygenated blood in the red and the oxygenated blood in the blue. And that's because we only have because these ones we combined three chambers in the heart. So once we become endothermic, once we become warm-blooded and need a quite bit of energy, that's not efficient. And so in birds and mammals, we have a four-chambered heart. And so basically, what we've done is we've sealed up the third chamber. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 chambers. We still have a double loop. And so that's more efficient. And those have involved us we've had different constraints depending on the environment and where they live. So what does blood do? Blood follows a loop. And so it is going to start at the heart. It is going to move throughout rest of the body in arteries, arterioles, eventually down to the capillaries and then comes back again. And so it keeps moving around your body. It is moving nutrients and it is moving that carbon dioxide out and it is moving oxygen to the part of your body that needs it.
So let's start with the heart then, because it's important that you understand the chamber of the heart and where blood is essentially going. So whenever you see a diagram like this, you want to kind of imagine yourself shifted into the heart. So basically your right side now is going to be over here and your left side is going to be over here. So let's start with the oxygenated blood. The oxygenated blood means that it's coming back from your body. So where does it came from? It's coming from your superior and inferior vena cava. So basically it's entering into what's called your right atrium. Atrium is where blood enters. So we've got the oxygenated blood coming back in your atrium. Then it goes through this valve here. This valve is called AV valve or atrioventricular valve. Sometimes we call it the tricuspid valve. So the blood is now going to go from here into the ventricles. So ventricle is from which blood exits. So it's going to your right ventricle, then going to move out through this semillunar valve. Semillunar valve are located at the connections between the pulmonary artery in the right ventricle and the aorta and the left ventricle. So semillunar valve moves into what's called the pulmonary artery. So this would be the pulmonary artery here, and what interesting about the pulmonary artery is it's an artery that has the oxygenated blood and the reason why it's headed to the lungs. So the blood is going out to that artery and moves away from the heart into the lungs. And now it becomes oxygenated blood. So oxygenated blood refers to the blood that has been exposed to oxygen and the lungs. So that's oxygenated blood is going to came back into your left atrium, then going to flow through our left AV valve down into this ventricle. Then it's going to move out to the back into this big artery. And that's called aorta. Aorta is the main blood vessels of the body. It carries blood from left side of the heart to the other arteries throughout the body. So it goes through the aorta, then this aorta as it move up here is going to send up arteries that go up to the head, then going to the body, then going to come back again.
Okay, so what are the blood vessels? Because those are kind of what we don't see when we moved off the screen there. Well, basically, they go from the arteries to the arterioles. So, here's an artery right here, and then going to the arterioles, and it's going to go to the capillaries, and then it's going to go back to the venules, and it's going to go back to the veins. So, they are three major classes of blood vessels, namely arteries, veins, and capillaries, and they are categorized according to their histological structure. Arteries transport blood between the tissues and away from the heart and have thick muscular walls with small internal lumina or passageways that can withstand blood under high pressure. Veins carry blood away from the tissues and towards the heart and have thin walls. Their internal lumen is larger than that of the arteries due to the fact that they contain blood under low pressure. They also have valves that prevent the blood from flowing backwards. Lastly, the capillaries, which are found in the muscle and the lungs, are microscopic and have a one-cell layer thick endothelial lining. In other words, the walls of the capillaries have the weight of one single epithelial cell. They can only tolerate blood under very low pressure due to the fact that it will move slower and gas exchange has a chance to take place. This is also where the exchange of gases, water, nutrients, and waste products takes place because the capillary walls are thin and fenestrated. After this, the capillaries collect into venules, which are the equivalent to arterioles, and fenestrated capillaries connect arterioles and venules. The blood is made up of four major components. The plasma is the fluid that surrounds the blood cells and help transport carbon dioxide, hormones, and the metabolic waste product. Red blood cells, which are also known as erythrocytes, are formed in the bone marrow and function mainly as oxygen carriers. White blood cells, or leukocytes, make up the body's immune system by producing antibodies and helping destroy harmful microorganisms. These cells are also created in the bone marrow. And lastly, platelets are cells that clump together to form blood clots and help protect the body by preventing bleeding.
What we're gonna doing today is explanation about my topic. So my topic is all about cardiac cycle, which is part of the circulatory system. So let's get started. So the cardiac cycle is the performance of the human heart from the ending of one heartbeat to the beginning of the next. It consists of two periods, one during which is the heart muscle relax and refills with blood called diastole. Following a period of robust contraction and pumping of blood dubbed cytoles. A normally performing heart must be fully expanded before it can efficiently pump again. Assuming a healthy heart and typical rate of 70 to 75 beats per minute. Each cardiac cycle or heartbeat takes about 0.8 seconds to complete the cycle. There are two atrial and two ventricular chambers of the heart. They are paired as the left heart and the right heart. That is, the left atrium with the left ventricle, the right atrium with the right ventricle, and they work in correct to repeat the cardiac cycle continuously. See cycle diagram at right margin at the start of the cycles. During ventricular diastoles, early the heart relaxes and expands while receiving blood into the both ventricles through both atria. Then near the end of ventricular diastoles, let the two atria begin to contract, and each atrium pumps blood into the ventricle below it. During ventricular systoles and ventricles are contracting and or ejecting. Two separated blood supplies from the heart, one to the lungs and one to all other body organs,